I'm Jacki, and I'm here with my friend David Blackmon, who is a writer and consultant. You probably know him from Forbes.com or Daily Caller. And he is semi-famous for making accurate prophecies in the petroleum clubs of Texas. From Houston to Dallas to Fort Worth, probably Midland too. David just has a knack for knowing what's coming ahead, which is hard to do in oil and gas. And 40 years experience. You're my man. I read every morning on Substack and elsewhere. So I wanted to ask a few questions today. I know here in Texas, we're all concerned about having enough power, which is absurd. We're only sitting on an ocean of natural gas. This is one of the energy capitals of the United States. Yet, people are unaware. In this state, we receive warnings at the height of summer because of heat that we need to power off non-essential appliances, adjust the thermostat like it's Jimmy Carter in 1978. And this is Texas. And now we're becoming the Bitcoin capital of the world. I have a lot of friends invested in this, so I need to be very careful how I tread here. But the legislature hit full panic button not long ago because they realized, how are we going to have enough power to power Texas and power all of these data centers? They're energy hogs. But there is a path forward. So what is that path forward?
Natural gas.
Okay.
Of course, we have more of it than any other state, really more than any other country except Russia and Saudi Arabia here in Texas. And it's become the fuel of choice for these data centers because it gives you 24/7 power generation. Originally, these big tech companies, when they first realized they're going to have to build all these data centers for their AI applications, believe they were going to, they kept saying, we're going to power it all with wind and solar. It's all going to be renewable. But the catch is they have to be up. They have to be up and running 99.999% of the time. They call it the 5 nines requirement. And you can't do that with wind and solar. Even with battery backup, you can't achieve that. It's just not feasible with current technology. And so they quickly realized, well, we're going to have to back up and do something else. And something else has rapidly become natural gas everywhere they go, except in isolated situations. For example, Microsoft did a deal with Constellation Energy to reopen Unit 1 of the 3 Mile Island plant, right? Because it was sitting there in mothballs. It's going to be cheap and quick to do that. But those opportunities are few and far between, and so natural gas is the fuel of choice.
Okay, what about modular nuclear?
Yes, that's coming. Yeah, but that will be down the road. We're still trying to deal. I know that the Trump administration is trying to really jumpstart that process and doing everything they can to do it. But you still have to deal with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. It takes a long time to get permits currently, but they're working on streamlining all of that. So hopefully the modular nuclear within a few years will start coming online and be able to also provide that 24/7 power generation for these data centers.
And we have Chris Wright at the Department of Energy.
Yes.
Whose first love was nuclear energy, actually, and it should be called the Department of Nuclear Energy anyway. So I have a lot of confidence that things are going to go well. I've interviewed him many times. You have too, and we're in good hands. So I want to move over to geopolitics, which is actually my favorite subject. And so apparently the so-called Russia hoax is kicking up again in the news. I thought I'd missed my opportunity to demonstrate, conclusively and prove. I think we can show in graphs and with a very short history lesson that the last thing that the Russians would want is a drill, baby, drill, pedal to the metal, oil and gas producing president. The green movement is their savior. So my question to you, maybe you could explain this very succinctly. I'll try to pull some graphs. Why is it in the best interest of the Russians or any petrostate really that relies on oil and gas for revenues to see to it that the green agenda advances in the United States?
Well, yeah, they all want to preserve their market share. Russia, early on in the shale revolution, really 25 years ago, when we started drilling here in the Barnett Shale, started pouring money into the anti-fracking movement, which was the green movement's first effort to kill natural gas, because they saw it as a threat, rightly so, to their market share. And, within 10 or 12 years later, the market was crashing because we had flooded the market with natural gas and oil, and prices were crashing because of that. And so Russia was very successful in pouring the money and helping to fund the green groups. And then after that, Saudi Arabia came in for the same reasons. And, now it's China also, just for geopolitical purposes, pouring money into these groups.
Well, and so many people were saying that this is a conspiracy theory and it cannot be proven. And actually, this is gone without notice, but at approximately 2017 or so, thereabouts, the U.S. Science Committee, which at that time was led by Lamar Smith, a Texan, did an investigation into the Russian influence in the green movement in the United States. And it was a very limited investigation, by the way.
Yeah.
Along with, before that, David Vitter over at the Environmental and Public Works Committee in the Senate. And they proved conclusively that in 2016, for every dollar that Russia spent on social media influencing the U.S. election, which is undeniable, okay, they spent 50 cents attacking U.S. oil and gas.
Sure.
Whether it was fracking or it was pipelines and infrastructure, one way or another. They call them watermelons, right? They're green on the outside and they're red on the inside. They're commie on the inside. And so that's not a conspiracy theory. And you can read those reports for yourself. Those are public reports out of the U.S. Congress. Again, the House Science Committee, Senate Committee, it was David Vitter back in 2014. So that's for sure. I think you have to have such a limited knowledge of geopolitics and oil and gas to buy into the fact that Putin would want to assist Donald Trump to become president. I remember T. Boone Pickens said, you can go to the U.S. Senate and pick any senator, and in 5 minutes, you can exhaust everything they know about oil and gas.
That's true.
Which is scary because that's the body that declares war.
Except for Ted Cruz. He knows a lot about it. But
well, and T. Boone Pickens said that in a book in 2008. That long predates Ted Cruz. So I'm sure it was accurate at the time.
Probably was, yes.
And we have a few more senators now that have some competency. Yeah. So that's good. The billionaires. I'm not going to name any names, and nothing against billionaires. Nothing against billionaires.
They're all wonderful people.
They're wonderful people, generally speaking. But the irony that someone like Rockefeller could, as the next richest person after King Solomon probably in world history, makes his money on oil and gas, and now his offspring spend their time and money warring against fossil fuels. And you know what? I found this book. I promised my friends I would share it. If horror is your favorite genre, you want to read this book. Okay, this is how great philanthropists failed, and you can succeed at protecting your legacy. This is every robber baron, like the huge foundations that you've ever heard of, where all the money is put into a foundation, and now foundation robber baron is turning in grave in horror, watching what is being done with their fortune. Don't let that happen to you. My wills and estates professor at Vanderbilt Law School said, if you don't remember anything else I ever taught you, like you forget everything else, the only way to make sure that your money does what you want it to is to give it away while you're alive.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you're only as strong, that airtight agreement is only as strong as the judge it's in front of, So anyway, back to U.S. offshore wind. What a delight. Every day you open, the newspaper.
Yeah, my favorite industry.
It's Christmas every day when you see what's happening to offshore wind and onshore wind. Why did Bill Gates not go to wind power and solar power for his data centers? 3 Mile Island used to be like the redheaded stepchild.
I know.
So what do you predict? You've always been right on your wind and solar predictions. What are we going to see 2 years from now?
Well, I mean, the industry's paralyzed. You're talking about offshore wind? Yeah, I mean, it's paralyzed at this point. Several of the projects have been canceled. I think more will be canceled because they're losing their subsidies. What we know about both wind and solar is that the only way they can remain viable in the marketplace, this is really more true of wind than solar, is to have a constant stream of constantly increasing government subsidies coming in and helping them stay in business.
Like Europe.
Right, which is what Europe's done, and California, has followed the Europe model. But but they're not viable business plans. They're just not for any long term without the subsidies. And so the One Big Beautiful Bill Act is phasing those out by the end of 2027. And once they're gone, they're gone. And these offshore wind projects, I mean, there's a couple of them that are probably going to survive and stay in business for a while. But the conditions out there, they're going to rust, they're going to dilapidate very rapidly. And we're going to be left with these 900 to 1,100 foot tall towers, almost as tall as the Empire State Building, hanging out there, rusting and falling into the ocean for the decades to come, because they're not putting up the bonding requirements necessary to properly dismantle them and retire them. And so it's all going to sit out there in the ocean and dilapidate. Same thing's going to happen with the onshore projects. Here in Texas, you drive through West Texas, they're all over the landscape. There's no regulatory requirements for those things to be properly dismantled and taken away when they use up their useful life, which happens in 7 to 10 years, not the advertised 25 years. So it's a real nightmare for every state that has a big wind power segment in their state. It's going to be this decades-long process of those things finally falling down, and they're going to be left there to rot. Unless the state decides to pay to have it all taken away, because the operators aren't going to do it.
And there's a national security element, too, to becoming reliant on wind power. A few people caught this, but the Texas Public Policy Foundation did a lawsuit against a certain development up in the Northeast, and they sued, I don't even know how many federal agencies. It was glorious, honestly. But what they also added in there was the Department of Defense, because apparently we have these cables, it's no secret, that are offshore, that are early warning systems for like submarines or hostile vessels. And these wind farms interfere with the ability of those cables to perform that function. And there are several other problems that we don't even have time for today.
Well, air traffic, is another thing. Radar, military radars. It's a long list, as you say. Yes.
Yes, but I want to go to electric vehicles, because I know you've been on this topic lately.
Yeah.
Literally, I worked on Capitol Hill up until 10 years ago, and at that time, it didn't matter if you were a government leader or you were a business leader. People were saying, we're all going to be driving electric vehicles in 5 years, or 10 years at the latest. 10 years at the latest. Okay, look around. You were right. You've been right I've been watching you for a while.
I have been right about electric vehicles. Yes, I am.
You're not even a prophet. You were just paying attention. Okay, where are we with electric vehicles? What's going on? Is it over?
Well, the good news is Tesla's going to be fine, because they're 15 years ahead of the rest of the industry. They're going to be fine with or without the subsidies, but the subsidies are going away. Sales after September 30th, when the subsidy expired, sales in October and November completely collapsed. Ford is about to cancel the F-150 Lightning. Stellantis backed away from plans to build its own full-size EV truck. And all these companies, all these car makers are going to be making hybrids and gas-powered cars, because that's what the public wants to buy. Public doesn't want to buy electric vehicles. There's range concerns, there's fire concerns, there's all these limiters to the marketability of those cars that are the same limiters, by the way, that existed in 1900 when they first came onto the market. People think the EV industry is new. It's as old as the gas-powered car industry. And in the early 1900s, the conventional wisdom was electric vehicles were going to be the consumer's choice. But they failed because of all these limiters that they still have not been able to solve for, even with all this advancement in technology. So that industry is going to be decimated without these big $7,500 per unit subsidies that got repealed. And Tesla will survive. The integrated auto companies will continue to make a number of electric vehicles, but it's going to be radically scaled back without the subsidies. It's just the way the business works, and they just can't compete with gas-powered cars price-wise without those subsidies. So it's just a matter of simple economics.
Well, my biggest objection is slavery. people think slavery is a thing of the past. If you haven't read the book Cobalt Red
Right.
about the Congo, for electric vehicle batteries, also wind, solar,
Yeah.
our iPhones,
Mongolia.
we are reliant on cobalt and other elements. They have to be mined. This is often done by children. And you can see, just, Google it. Children, Congo, cobalt. They're wearing no shoes, no safety equipment. These are
Little bee kids. Yeah.
I mean, tiny. They
5,
should
6
be
years
in
old.
kindergarten.
Yeah.
And they're being thrown into the ground to mine for these elements. And if they don't eat.
Right.
This is child labor in its worst form. And I had a friend who visited actually Congo to consider investment in some of these mines. And he alerted me that he saw firsthand there's also human trafficking going on the side of the mines. These are young girls. When I say young, I mean really young. So this is not an ethical industry. From slavery, there are more people enslaved today than at any time in human history. And so we need to remind the younger generation of that because they're a little confused about good guys and bad guys.
Yeah.
All right. Back to oil and gas. You said we're going from drill, baby, drill to build, baby, build.
Right.
In the industry. What does that mean?
Well, I mean, everybody thought Trump getting elected to a second term, we'd have another big drilling boom in the shale plays. But it's a different situation now. 2017, the shale plays were still in their initial development phase. And so you wanted to have a lot of drilling happening to delineate the fields and determine where the resources were and get that all settled. But since then, now we're 8 years later, all the shale plays have become mature. They're in their development phase. And that, puts a lot less emphasis on drilling, more emphasis on building out the infrastructure, finding economies of scale, efficiencies in how you're conducting your business, and advancing technology. And so the rig count is a third what it was in Trump's early years of the first term, right? And that's because of market factors. It's because of business factors. It's not because of public policy necessarily. But what we do need to do in the industry in this administration is build, baby, build. We need more pipelines. We need more LNG export facilities. We need more midstream processing facilities for natural gas. We really need more refineries.
Yes.
For crude oil. And it's been almost 46 years now since the last large refinery was opened in the United States. That's almost half a century. It's insane.
It's an outrage.
It's an outrage. And we produce 3 times as much oil now as we did in 1979. So that's why we're one of the leading exporters of crude oil now. It's not because we're selling it to other countries. It's because it has to go overseas to find a home in a refinery. That's a situation that really needs to get resolved. I know Chris Wright is working on that. Doug Burgum at Interior, Lee Zeldin at EPA. We've got to find a way to really increase our refining capacity in the United States. So all of that has to happen. Trump understands that. Chris Wright understands that. They all get it. And they're all moving in that direction. And this is why I'm so encouraged about what's happening in energy now, as opposed to the Biden years where everything was being obstructed and scaled back. This country has a huge demand for energy. We have to do this. This is a national security imperative. And it's so refreshing to have people like we have now in these jobs who really understand it and the reasons why we have to do it.
Well, and what I love, I mean, the up point or the ending on a high note is that I always tell everyone, we're the Saudi Arabia of coal. We're the Saudi Arabia of natural gas. We're the Saudi Arabia of nuclear in terms of our fleet. I mean, now we're the Saudi Arabia of oil. Forget, in fact, if you're under the age of 30, you might not even know what I'm talking about, right? Because we're now dominant. The only thing standing in the way is bad decision making.
Yep.
Right. So, but
here's one quick anecdote.
Yes.
In September of 2008, nationwide, America produced 3.8 million barrels of oil today. Last month, we produced 13.8 million barrels of oil a day. Mm-hmm. 10 million barrels a day more. That's Saudi Arabia. That's what Saudi Arabia produces. That's how much it's increased in the United States. It's the most amazing economic success story in the 21st century.
And can get better.
Yes, it can.
We have a long way. We have a lot of upside.
We do.
In the future, if only we choose to seize it and make the right decision. So
that's right.
David Blackmon, thanks for coming by.
Thank you so much.